Welcome to Vertical City. I'm your host, Lennon Richardson. During each episode, I interview one of the world's top experts in architecture, urban design, engineering, or ecology so that we can better understand and develop solutions for sustainable living. Thank you for listening, and get ready to join us on another groundbreaking and uplifting episode. Yi'an is a professor at Peking University in Beijing and a modern-day Renaissance man. He has studied and worked in many fields, including programming, engineering, theoretical and computational physics, fusion energy, and high-performance computing. Drawing from his diverse expertise, Yi'an recently authored a book titled Next Revolution, which argues that humanity's next step is to construct 3D cities. His concept of a 3D city shares many similarities with our organization's vertical city concept, but there is one major difference. Yi'an's 3D city is entirely indoors. In this interview, we discuss Yi'an's concept and why he feels it's so important to create dedicated, controlled human habitats. We also dive into the possibility of building a 3D or vertical city in the near future and what it's going to take to get us there. Visit verticalcity.org/podcast for complete show notes and to let us know, what do you think about this topic? Yi'an, welcome to the Vertical City podcast.
Okay, thank you, Lennon.
It's really good to have you on. I've been really interested in interviewing you because I know that you have a lot of ideas which are very similar to ours.
Yes.
I want to start, though, by talking about a book that you recently wrote, which is called The Next Revolution. Can you tell us what are the main arguments that you're putting forth in this book?
Yeah, the name of Next Revolution, which comparing with the other human society, the revolutions such as agricultural, industrial, and information. So I think we need another revolution to push the human society forward. The key word is we are trying to build a society, a human society, which is more independent and more sustainable. So it's different from the former revolutions, which is mostly expanding and ruthlessly expanding.
When you use the word independent, what do you mean?
So I mean the people or the human being must live a life independently from the nature, or we don't use the nature too much.
I see. So your idea is that man should be separate from nature, that they shouldn't be living side by side, but humans should have their own environments, and then nature has its own environment. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, almost like that. But
okay.
This must be go step by step. So we are trying to work to that position, to that direction. So it would be good for both human being and for Mother Earth or for the nature.
Okay, so your argument is that your main argument is that it's good for people and the Earth. I could see how it would be good for the Earth. Obviously, if humans aren't interacting so much directly with nature, then we're not going to damage it as much. But how is it good for humans?
Firstly, we build a dedicated habitat for ourselves. So this habitat is for human only. So it's arranged best for our living, for the living of the human beings, such as the best weather, a smart city. Everything is organized or arranged for people to live the best.
Okay, that makes sense to me. But I also feel that part of what makes for the best possible life is some aspects of nature. So would you be able to see birds or to smell wildflowers or explore some sort of natural area?
Yeah, it's go well with the natural exploring. you can still explore the nature, all kinds of nature, as well. We have a better nature there for you to explore, right? Once the human being occupies all the space, all the best places, and we use all the lands and the ocean, the nature wouldn't be as good as it would be, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So if humans are more reservative and we restrict our needs and build our own habitat, so the nature or other species may have a better habitat.
Okay.
Everyone live better.
So tell me a little bit more about the human habitat that you're imagining.
Yeah, so we're on the same page with the vertical city. My word 3D city, it means vertical city in English. So in China, that word is not very natural, such as vertical, so I use 3D. So the basic idea is still a vertical city. So the basic concept of vertical city is we use less space, but build a isolated and dedicated human habitat.
Yeah, that pretty much sums
because
it up.
It's huge enough and it has an artificial environment.
Definitely, and I think that vertical city, that phrase is almost a little bit misleading because we're placing the emphasis on the vertical because that's the aspect that's been missing. We've always had horizontal cities, but by placing the emphasis on the vertical aspect, then they do become more three-dimensional in nature.
Yes.
In your model, in your idea, tell me a little bit about what would be some of the major changes between the existing cities we have and in your idea.
In a traditional city, we have an open environment. All the time, in every place, you interact directly with the environment, such as the sunlight. If the sunlight comes, it shines on every people. So if we have a rain, you will interact and interfere with your life. And if you have a tornado, so your life will be changed. So every time, everyone is interacting directly with the environment. While in the 3D city, this will cut off the basic elements of the nature. So we build an artificial environment for ourselves. We live always in a very nice, you can call it a weather environment. So the temperature is always fine. The humidity is always the best, and you never have weather change or climate change or natural disaster like a tornado or like a drought or anything else. So you just live constantly in the best environment. So this is the essence of a vertical city, because it is large enough to host the whole city, or in a larger scale, you can say for the human species.
Okay, so I'm seeing one fundamental difference between your idea and our thinking. In our model, we're basically trying to build vertically and three-dimensionally so that we can increase humanity's access to nature and to outdoor spaces and to preserve those horizontal lands for not only nature but also for agriculture. Again, I'm wondering why you feel it's so important that man be isolated from nature, because weather can be a problem, but the sun is obviously very necessary to our lives.
Yes. One thing is the isolation is inevitable. Isolation separates people from the influence of the human species to the environment. Actually, the sunlight, if we talk about the city at a size of a hill of half a mile or 1 kilometer, in my concept, it's still the same. The sunlight can never reach the inside of the city, because the sunlight is kind of only a few tens of meters influence to any building. So you have to use artificial lighting in your city all the time. When your city built with certain size, the sunlight is just not available.
I can understand that, but isn't it still important that humans have
Yeah.
direct exposure to sunlight?
This is one of the major change people have to think, or tradition, or habit people have to change. Actually, when we live in a modern city like Beijing or New York, people use artificial light all the time. But the only difference is they still have a chance to visit the so-called environment, or you can have an open space. You can see the skies. But in a vertical city, you can still see the open sky, maybe through a glass, or just as you planned in the lobby or in a balcony or something like that. So you can still visit it. And for a common human life, such as walking and go schooling and any kind of human activity, does not necessarily involve into do that in the nature, in the natural environment. It's a choice. You don't have to do that. And without the nature involvement of all kinds of the hostile things, you can still live a good life, because you just go to work, you eat, you party with friends. Everything can be happening indoor. In a vertical city, if it goes well as we planned, everyone has more leisure time. So everyone has more time. They can go to explore in a better environment or a better nature.
But what about vitamin D? I know that we get vitamin D from the sun, and that's through direct exposure.
Yeah, I actually discussed about that, because people don't need so much vitamin D. If you expose your hand 10 minutes to the sunlight, you get enough vitamin D for yourself in one day. So even artificial light can add some ultraviolet, and healthy ultraviolet, just enough for yourself, for people. This is easy because we now have the ultraviolet light, right? So it's a very simple thing to handle.
I've also heard, though, that if people aren't getting direct exposure to sunlight, that they're prone to depression. I know that this has sometimes been a problem in Seattle, where it's very cloudy.
Yeah.
How is that? Is that overcome in any way?
Yeah, this is part of my argument in my book too. People are less, people feel more depressed in the environment without sunlight. People like bright lights. One of the solutions is, in a vertical city, we can have some places with very bright lighting, and we are not separated from the earth, from the sun. Anyway, we still have a lot of spaces which you can see the sun and with the lighting. And actually, even we talk about the traditional cities like Seattle, or some place like in China, we have a hill province like Guizhou and Sichuan. We don't see sunlight often. People live there, they have to. And there's also people like Indians. They cannot see the sun for 4 months in a few years, so they still make a living there. So in a vertical city, we can create, people still have a choice to see the sunlight or to have a bright lighting, to be not depressed, if this poses a problem.
And so what are some of the other common concerns that people might have regarding your three-dimensional city model that you address in your book?
Yeah, something like people may be worried about terrorist attack, about the fire problem. If fires happens in a closed space, it would be a disaster. So I discussed about that, and I said you have to change the construction code. You use less inflammable materials. So everything basically is not flammable in such a city. So you won't have a fire. You cannot have a fire, or at least a large scale fire in such a city. And because in a vertical city, everything is monitored. You have all kinds of sensors, monitors everywhere. And you have access. People, the fire brigade or firefighters have access to everywhere in a very short time. You don't have to use a truck to drive there because the city is accessible everywhere. Well, it's accessible in a few minutes. So you can deal with such a situation in a very short time. And if you have less chance to start a fire, and you have less reaction time to react to a fire, so this wouldn't pose a problem. At least not as bad as in a traditional city.
That does sound really similar to our vertical city model, and something that people have questioned us on is like, well, what if there's a fire at the top? Like, how do you get a truck or a ladder all the way up there? I'm like, well, it's multiple levels. You just move throughout the city. You don't have to reach it from the ground. So I think that there is some truth in what you're saying there, that you can be more prepared to deal with disasters.
Yeah. So in the vertical city, we are much more prepared, and we can rule out the chances of fire, at least reduce the chances of fire.
In your concept, how are some of the other requirements for life provided? How is food provided, water, energy?
Food and energy. Food has to be produced elsewhere. I had a whole chapter to discuss about that. Some of the idea is we use the desert land. We use the highlands, desert highlands, which is originally quite barren or just desert in Earth. But it is the best place to grow food artificially. I mean, in a greenhouse, you can build a greenhouse in the highlands or in the desert. It works better than in lowlands in the traditional farming ground.
Okay.
One of the other ideas is we grow food or use meat. We can grow food in ocean because most of the ocean is barren. It's kind of like a desert with water. So there's a lot of places you can grow, and there are technically feasible ways to farm an ocean. So we kind of also, this is also doing something good for the human nature, because for the earth, because we already exploit too much. We catch too much fish out of the ocean. Now we're trying to restore the ocean.
So you would see all the food being produced from the outside and then transported in.
Yeah, this is the basic idea. But for those like fruits and the vegetables, the green vegetables, because they are easily grow indoor or in the greenhouse nearby, so we can still have that.
Mm-hmm. So what's your thinking, your reasoning for separating humans and their source of food? Why wouldn't you just integrate them?
In the traditional farming or actual industrial farming, as it's going right now, we use all the land, we use pesticides, we use a lot of fertilizers, which changes the environment. Well, in a greenhouse, we now call it a vertical farming, or just vertical farming is another problem. It's our topic. But a greenhouse farming in the desert is actually, the technology is available right now. Greenhouse farming can grow a lot of food in a smaller area, so we can, we already have the technology and space to do that. The only problem is that the traditional farming land is still productive and keeping feeding the world. So it's hard to persuade people to move from the places they live right now to a more deserted, barren island.
Yeah. I wonder what sort of inefficiencies are created by having to transport the food so far. How would it be transported, and how much energy would that use, and then also pollution?
The food transporting does not require that much of energy because it only takes, let's say, only a small percentage in the transporting of all goods, all the merchandises of humankind.
So would this be arriving by trains or by trucks?
Yeah, I'm thinking of trains because if you develop a farmland, a dedicated farmland in highlands, so it's already industrial. So it can be organized, transported by trains because it's mostly energy efficient.
And what about other goods like clothing and such? Are those also produced outside the 3D city?
For many of the goods, such as clothes or we call it light industry, right? It can be hosted, it can be reside in a vertical city. But those we call it heavy industry, such as like steel making or mining, still has to be outside a vertical city.
Okay.
As it is now.
All right. So food arrives to the city via train, and then how is it transported once it reaches the city to reach all its final destinations and the end consumers?
If you have most of the factories near or inside a vertical city, so the transport wouldn't be a problem. But the food was grown far away. You can still have a vertical city there, but it has to be transported because the area is much smaller than a traditional farmlands, agricultural land. So it's much easier to collect and transport and deliver.
My question though is, how are the goods moved throughout your three-dimensional city? Throughout. So a train comes to the three-dimensional city, yes, and it stops on the ground somewhere, mm-hmm, and they take the food off, and then it has to go to multiple different locations throughout
yeah. So the delivery or the logistical delivery inside the vertical city, right?
Yes.
The kind of limited human beings or population inside each vertical city. So you can plan those delivery because you always have to have a train stop or cargo landing area inside the vertical city. So you can deliver the goods with vertically moving. You still have an elevator, right? You have elevators, and horizontally, because everything is not so heavy right now. You don't have to use a heavy truck. It can be delivered in small quantities, at least smaller. So a small robot or a small car, such as an electric car, can move some goods. It's also hard to design a good cargo delivery system inside a vertical city.
Are you familiar with the new technology of the ropeless elevators that can move three-dimensionally?
Yeah, I know that. But the elevators can only reach limited places. So to cover the last 100 meters, you have to use certain assistant traffic tools, right? So I'm talking about that because mm-hmm, the elevators or cars or trains remove a large quantity of goods to some port in the vertical city, and the elevators and the smaller vehicles deliver it to your door.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And how about humans? How are they moving throughout your city model?
In a vertical city like that, people moving mostly by walking. And for those disabled, they can use wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, because they now don't have to walk a long distance. So wheelchairs or even those what do we call that, segways or assistant I'm not talking about bicycles, but because I don't think bicycle is a good idea to travel inside a vertical city. But you can use some even smaller ones. Now you can have electric wheelchair for disabled, and for the kids you can have some skateboard, something like that, or electric powered skateboard, because you don't have to move a long distance right now, and you can charge it everywhere.
And then what about? Oh, okay, that's neat.
Mm-hmm.
What about waste? How's that dealt with?
Waste is not a problem. It can be dealt in. I consider this problem in certain ways. Firstly, in the vertical city, you don't have to. The package is lighter, so you need less package. So you're trying to deliver things just as it is, or with a universal package such as a box or anything like that. So you don't produce that much kind of waste.
Okay, what about human waste?
Human waste, it goes as it goes right now. In a vertical city, you don't have to shower as much, because you don't sweat as much. Only as you're doing exercise or working out, and the waste, the water can be recycled, mostly outside of the city, and the other waste it just have to be dumped through pipes, or maybe treated. Yeah, it has to be treated like it is right now.
Okay, and so in your model, how large of a human population would each city house?
By considering the maximum walking space for everyone, the walking distance. So Ken is thinking about half a mile size. I'm thinking about 1 kilometer, so it's almost the same. So in such a city, and with the height, I'm thinking of less than 500 meters high, because I think vertical trafficking would be a problem if it would be too high. So in such a size, with these limits, a city would host like 500,000 to 1 million.
Wow.
So this is the maximum population it can host in one city.
How much private space is allotted to each individual, and then also what sort of public spaces exist?
Excuse me?
How much private or individual space would each individual have?
Oh, okay.
And then
I have such a calculation. I did this for Beijing, because in Beijing, each individual has less than 50 square meters, considering everything, all the spaces they might have, such as your apartment, your working space, the road, the park, the commercial area you might visit. So the average number for a Beijinger is 50 square meters. In my city, I arranged 100 square meters for everyone. So
better than current exists.
Yeah. So in a vertical city, you can have even more space.
Yeah, that's something that we argue in our model as well. What about public spaces?
Public spaces such as a park and playground, or even commercial places. It also kind of at least twice as in a traditional city. The only, because when you arrange a city vertically, you multiply your ground space by the layers, right? By the floors of your building. But you have to also leave some space with high clearance, such as a playground or park. So those spaces have to be reduced from your number, because you use 2 or 3 or even more layers. But you can arrange the apartments, the place you live, with a lower clearance. This is what's going right now in China, because a commercial city, in a commercial place, each layer or each level need a higher clearance. The living space is usually occupies in the next space.
So how feasible is this concept using our current technology?
Current technologies it's totally feasible right now because we don't, in a vertical city, just as I talked about, the height is only half the highest building right now. And the span is not that much as the airport or any other large building or complexes. So we can build a city at this size with available technology.
And what about the finances that are necessary? What would it take to get the right investors?
Yeah, the finances for the developer. Well, for medium-sized vertical city, it can be built in multi-stage. Each stage you will take like 1 year or two. In my plan to build such a city, it was built one large layer after the other large layer. But each large layer, it was maybe like 20 meters high. So it's kind of like a space, a city space, a city field, a city land, which is 1 kilometer square. But in this place, we close this space, and the other developer or smaller developer can develop all the properties or any facilities later with their own ideas. Then we build another layer. We enclose another space up on this first layer and move up again and again and again. So each layer only takes a short time to build.
Okay, I think I can picture.
Financially, they will be profitable for them in a short time.
I can definitely picture what you're expressing there. So you're saying that you're going to build the container, you're going to enclose the area, and then developers decide what's the best use of that space, and then that will happen over and over and over again.
Yeah, either the city or the government or the developer decides how to use the space.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need some regulations and rules or planning.
So how do you see this idea coming to fruition? What would be the next steps? Where would it start? Would you build a smaller scale one initially? What are your thoughts?
I pictured some occasions for a smaller scale one. One is just as I said, that there are some rich places which they live in a very hostile environment. They can build, they are already building a huge buildings, traditional ones. But they can reorganize or they can replan. They can change their plan for large scale building or a small vertical city. And the other idea is that there's some, China is building new cities in some rural areas. When China is developed certain area, they are planning a whole new city, actually all over China.
Yeah.
You heard a lot about the ghost cities in China because they originally empty and they build a whole city there, but no one moves in there yet. Those cities are kind of a waste because they are even they're occupied, they're still a traditional one. They use a lot of energy, and they will have a bad traffic, and they are not immune from all those natural disasters. So in the new plan, if some city is planning a new city right now, they can try to use a vertical city idea.
I see. So are there any specific regions or provinces where you think that this would be a likely candidate for them to develop one?
Yeah, for those rich places, I'm thinking about the small cities around Shanghai. Shanghai area. I mean, Jiangsu and Zhejiang, those provinces, they are rich, but they don't live in a very good place because the weather there is really terrible. It's terrible all year round almost, because they have a very cold and humid, cold and wet winter, and also moist and hot summer. And in the spring, they have a lot of rains, very, very wet. So the life there is kind of miserable for me.
Okay, so they have both the means to do it financially, and then they would have a desire to do it because of the harsh conditions.
Yes,
that definitely makes sense to me.
Mm.
So in some of our email correspondence, one of the things that you mentioned is one of the benefits to producing these types of cities is that it could create a more equal society.
Yes. Well, at least in China, if you live in a place which is live in a property far away from the city, you have to spend 2 hours each way, go to your work and go back. So you waste 4 hours, and it's exhausting. Or you will be like stuck in the traffic and have a very bad mood, right? So for people which is not wealthy, you have to experience all those things. But in a vertical city, everyone live in a good life, live in a higher standard life. They have equal amount of time. They work in an equal environment, so their health is good, and their mood is good. So everyone, at least, happier. So this helps with a more equal life, and also for wealthy people, they can own a property which was very high price, but for others, they barely have a place to live at all, right? But in a vertical city, the properties don't have much difference between properties. They're just the house. There's no location problem, because the location is important in your wealth, right? The place you live, and the place which is close to all kinds of services. But in a vertical city, everything for everyone is more equal. So people are more equal, and the wealth does not present does not have that much kind of privilege.
I definitely could see how just access to resources would create more equality.
Yes.
And in regards to property value, though, I wonder that wouldn't some places be more valuable because they would be on the outskirts of the city and therefore have better views? Yeah,
there are differences, but the difference is much smaller than the traditional city. You can have the same apartment of the same size, which with a price which 10 times maybe as a suburb, right? In a traditional city, but in such a city, maybe twice.
Well, I know that personally, I would prefer to live somewhere that has a window where I can look out over a nice vista, and if I had enough financial resources, I would definitely be willing to pay for that.
Yeah, but if this is a choice or people's choice, we can develop more living space on the site, because the commercial places or working or the offices. It can be inside the city, like more inside and more accessible to everyone, right? So you can have a window.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't necessarily care to have a view when I'm shopping. When I'm working, it's nice, and definitely when I'm at home, it's nice.
Yes.
Are there any other advantages that we haven't really talked about that you feel your model would be better for humanity?
Well, the security problem, because such a city is automatically smart, so you have all those sensors like monitors everywhere. So in such a city, it's much safer. right?
Safer as far as crime?
Yeah. So because the crime is less likely to happen, and whenever it happens, is much easier to catch the bad guys. So over a certain time, the crime rate will drop a lot because you cannot benefit from crime.
So you would see that this process would be taking place through video cameras or other types of monitoring devices?
Yeah, you have video cameras everywhere in such a city.
What about inside your own home?
Yeah, as it was right now, actually in all those major buildings, right?
Yeah, but what about in your own apartment?
If you own an apartment, the apartment itself is also a smart place, and the apartment itself will have monitors in all those walkways and corridors. So it's still easier to locate everyone or to decide which one visited there or to find out what happened.
I see.
Okay.
I see. And similar to what we talked about earlier with the fire departments, I imagine that you would have police stations throughout the city, and then that there would be very easy for them to access every area if there was some sort of conflict.
Yeah, so investigate if anything goes wrong. You don't have to drive a whole 10 miles to find out, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So also in regards to smart technology, are there any other significant advantages that this specific technology would create?
Yes, because in such a city, the internet connection is available everywhere. So everything you're using can be smart. Right? Okay. You can connect to your house. You can check your house all the time. You can know where your loved ones where they are, or if you choose to hide them, that's another problem. So this is automatically smart internet connection. But in a traditional city, there are a lot of places without signal, right?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
And in such a city, you can imagine the shopping and the delivery is much different because now if you buy something online, some guys must drive and deliver to you. So this is a very, you might be not there, and the delivery is expensive. But in such a city, the small robots or drones can do the same thing for you. So it's much easier for you. Like if you don't want to cook, you can, because you always go there and you find a place to eat. Very convenient. And you can have some robot cooker for you. So a small robot can deliver to you all the time because it can find you everywhere. So you don't have to cook or you don't have to do a lot of things. You just enjoy.
Sounds interesting. I just had this thought of leaving the gym and the robot knows.
Yeah, yes, and John will drop a towel to you.
Yeah, they know I always need a protein shake after my exercise, so it's right there as soon as I'm done. That would be pretty excellent.
And yeah, it will pick up a beer and drop to your hand all the time.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
It can happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
Only in closed space, but in a traditional city, the electronics would be at a severe endangerment of all those kinds of threats, right? I mean, you cannot ask a robot to deliver to your home all the time, at least all the time.
So there would be some limitations?
No. I mean, in a traditional city, a robot doesn't work well.
Right.
You cannot expect it to cross the road safely, right?
Right.
But in a vertical city, it can.
All right. So as you continue to push this idea, what do you think are going to be some of the biggest obstacles that will need to be overcome in order to implement your first concept?
The obstacle is still people's acceptance. because this idea is still kind of radical, just as you raise the concerns about how I don't want to live in a space which cannot see the sunlight, and people automatically have this concept, right?
Right.
So I'm kind of comparing a vertical city with traditional city, just as a traditional city with a village. In a village, you don't have you have low access to a lot of things, but in a city, you can.
Mm-hmm.
In a vertical city, you also have access to a lot of things, which is not available in the traditional city. But people in a village might not want to move to a city because they cannot grow food, they cannot raise raise a chicken in their building, or they think this is not acceptable because it makes his life he have to work elsewhere for someone else to live in a city, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is not acceptable too. Well, people now cannot accept a place without seeing sunlight. Actually, they already live in a space. We always stay in the office or in the mall or in any building which you have no access to the sunlight. Well, but people ignore it because he can go out. But now, even in such a city, this is not as bad as people might imagine. So this is basically people's, the way they think.
How easy is it for people to move in and out of the city?
Well, because for most activities, they don't have to. For such a city, it will be designed for everyone to move out quickly because you have some kind of evacuation issues, some kind of construction code, right, required.
Yeah.
So people can move out of the city easily or move to a park on the top of the city or on the side of the city very easily. In most occasions, they don't want to go out because it's not as convenient as that right now. But as a activity, because we can have more leisure time, maybe in such a city we work 3 days and we have 4 days off, so you can go out. You can have your car, you can drive everywhere you want, but it's still quite easy because it takes only like 10 minutes to reach to your car and you drive out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're nearing the end of the interview, and so I'm curious if there's anything else that you feel is really important that you want to express to our listeners that we haven't talked about yet.
Well, yeah. So the key issue is, I think just as discussed by Ken, is a sustainability of the ways of our living, includes the city. The city itself can last much longer than a conventional building. And everything inside the building also lasts longer because there's no attacks from the natural elements like wind or moist or heat or sunlight. So even everything lasts longer. For people living in a city like this, they can have a much healthier life and live longer and have less disease because they also don't have all those attacks from the environment. We don't have insects. We don't have mice. We don't have a severe weather or anything like that. So people's health would be much better.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds like Ken King's ideas and our organization's concepts and yours are really a lot in alignment. The major difference I'm seeing is that your environment is totally enclosed and controlled, where ours offers access to outdoor spaces. Is there anything else that you think is significantly different between the two models?
Well, the models is quite similar. So but we don't know how exactly the first vertical city would look like, right? So you have to design it. Even in Ken's idea, you also have to modify certain concepts for the developers.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, they're working concepts.
Yeah, concepts and the design, or actually we have to also working on the construction codes
Uh-huh.
of all the aspects such as the firefighting and Medicare, or everything, delivery, all kinds of infrastructure. So there's a lot of things to consider before you actually build one, because we don't have all those rules yet, those codes yet. The vertical city, the concept itself is very attractive to everyone, I think, but there's still a long way to do that.
All right, great. So just with our last minute here, getting back to your book, The Next Revolution, it's written in Chinese. Are you planning on making it available in English as well?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Okay, excellent. And so our listeners know we're going to post links to Yi'an's book and everything else that we've discussed. And just as a final question for our listeners, I would like to know what all of you think. What do you think about his concept that he's put forth compared to the vertical city concept that we've been discussing? And how would you feel about living in an environment that was totally controlled? Would that kind of cause some fear and resistance within you, or would you think that would be very nice because you could control all the environment, you wouldn't have to be exposed to elements and things like that? Post your comments on our website, which is verticalcity.org/podcast, or wherever you happen to be listening to this interview. And again, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast. I think that this was a really exciting conversation, and I also know that you're going to be one of the speakers at our conference that's coming up in October this year, later in China. So thank you for participating with us and collaborating with us, and I look forward to working together with you in the future.
Okay, thank you. It's glad to share with you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vertical City. Learn more about the Vertical City concept and continue the conversation by visiting our website, verticalcity.org. I truly hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe to our podcast, leave a review on iTunes, and most importantly, share Vertical City with your friends and colleagues so that together we can create solutions for sustainable living. I'm Lennon Richardson, signing off for the Vertical City team. See you next time.